Oh, so welcome back to the Church of Rod. As always, thank you for all the love I've been getting on my videos and the podcast, and I always want to give it back. Same thing, the likes, the views, shares, comments. Thank you for it all. Today it's gonna be a more of another rant video. Uh, I was just thinking the other day, why one of my pet peeves in the world today. And I guess it's just, I'm not gonna say in the world today because as I'm gonna talk about, I feel like this is something that happens, it's just a common thing throughout human history. But it's how, I feel like there's too much of an emphasis on looking towards the past or, focus on the past, remembering the past, instead of, working towards how we can build a better future or, or a better present, is looking for the past, like looking for the past to determine things on the present. Sorry, the guys, I made this video kind of on a whim. I just to kind of put my thoughts out here, so my mind's gonna be scrambled as I gather my thoughts and try to express them elegantly for you to digest and hopefully agree. But I guess I'll just speak to like certain ways I've seen it, and one big way I've seen it, and like the year 2026, and it's April 2026. It's about to be May, it's about to be June, it's about to be summer 2026. And we've all heard about, or everybody knows about how everybody remembers summer 2016. 2016 is the music was better, the vibes were better, the movies were better. I'll agree. Like 2016 was an amazing year in my opinion. And I was 15 during it, so like I was a teenager, so it was a prime. Yes, it was great, but I don't, you know, the world in 2016 and the world in 2026 are two different worlds. Like COVID and the impact of COVID really, like, it's a whole new world out here. Like there's people social, like there's a whole generation of teenagers who's social. When I was a teenager, we were raised, and I'm not trying to be like one of those old, back in my, and I'm gonna get into this, back in my day, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying, like, just objectively, we were raised, we kind of grew alongside technology and, social media, whereas they grew, up and grew into using it. So they grew, and then of course, COVID happened and took away a lot of their prime social years. And so the internet's a poison when you're on it too much, but they had nothing else to do. So a whole generation of teens like that. You have I mean, I was just this new cult, like the culture is different from 2016. Cause you can't ignore like what's going on in the world. In my opinion, like 2016, there was I mean, the economy was recovering from 2008 crisis. Like, so there wasn't really like, I'm sure there was big political events, but like I said, there was no COVID. There wasn't like, the George Floyd protests when everybody was cooped up inside just consuming it. It was a whole different era. Like, and I guess my point is it can't be replicated. It's not going to be replicated. And I feel like people try to replicate it. And I feel like so much of that is just people following the flock. Like, what? I don't, maybe, and I get, you have to look to the past to like learn. But that's to me, that's what the past should be for, is to learn from the past, not to constantly, just use it to, oh, this we're gonna try to match how it was back then. No, I wanna like be better. Like, I was 15 in 2026, so obviously, I was a child, I was broker, and so I was more like locked up, which I know, to be fair, a lot of people when they were that age, they were like living crazy. But now I'm older, I'm like free, like like, why would I not have the tools to make my life better or have a better, 2026 than the summer 2016 when I was a child? Like, I don't get that. And it's people might like, I can understand. Well, I can understand like children growing up, they hear about this mythical 2016, like, oh yeah, we want to have our own 2020 16. But when you're my peers, my age, how can you? I don't understand. Like, you, it's a whole new world. Like, there's a whole new era of possibilities. But just to put it out there, I do think summer of 2026, I just have a feeling it's gonna be better than the summer 2016. But The thing is, nostalgia and it's kind of a lie because especially when you get to a certain age, like I think a lot of people remember things from their childhood. Like a lot of older people, they might remember a lot of older like our parents and grandparents. They love the '80s. Like they always reminisce and fantasize about the '80s. They miss the '80s, but I understand from the looks of it, it looks like it was fun. And I kind of wish I could have but my thing is like you know people they'll say, oh, let's make the '80s, let's dress like they did in the '80s, let's why not replicate the vibes of like just they because back then they didn't care. There was no social media, there was no phones. People weren't having to worry about getting recorded in a when they're dancing. Like it was just another vibe. Why not just see what the vibe, not like the style, the aesthetic, but the vibe and then try to match it and then see what come better. Like I mean, society's more open, more free. So it naturally there should be every year going forward. I know it hasn't been like this, but take every year should be better and better going forward in human history. Like now, 2026. I mean, 2027 should be better than 2026. 2028 should be better than 2027. Because that's just the way. That's with the technology we have, with the morals we have now, like with how we're all connected. That's just every human should strive for that, and every human should be like they earn it. It's theirs because I mean every human puts into making the world a better place, even if they might not realize it. They put into like progression. They feel like society should progress, and I mean, and I guess I said I was gonna talk about entertainment more, but this is where I think it really is kind of, in my opinion, big. I'm what you call, I guess, a progressive. But I mean, I just when you see that term, why would you be anything other but than a progressive society? Needs to progress. There was a time when slavery was legal, women were like second class citizens. I mean, even like poor white men were second class citizens, and or uneducated white who couldn't read, or and only rich people were citizens. Like every every human history till now, from human history all the way till now. I mean, you could go back to the like days of the Bible the day before, even before some writings that predate the Bible, you'll see, and you can see a consistent pattern of, or you can know every time there's like a big advancement in like human rights, because a lot of the big cultures, it was like a big thing, like for l- sorry, systems fried, and I was just I start talking and I don't know what I'm saying, but in my opinion. You had to like you had to be progressive. It has to be progressive. I mean, why would you not want it to be progressive? And I don't when you see so much propaganda about, oh man, this era was better. Let's make the country better by going back to this era. Finally reminiscing on this era. Like nowadays, everybody says, "Oh man, I miss the '80s and the '90s," but I'm pretty sure in the '80s and '90s they were saying I missed the '70s and the '60s, and the '60s and the '70s say I missed the '40s. Maybe not, they were saying they weren't saying it in the '30s, but I mean I don't know. In the '30s they definitely were saying it about the '20s because '30s they were in the Great Depression and the '20s. But so maybe from every decade from the '40s till now, I bet you there was a generation saying, "Oh, I miss it was better back in the day. I missed back in the day." But it's because they're getting older. People are getting like you're getting older. That's you. You're always gonna finally remember the present day because you were younger. Like you were younger, you had no responsibilities. You carefree. You obviously were living off your parents and mooching off other human beings. You were just having all you had. Your life was just dedicated to having fun. And that's what you found. That's why the TV shows you remember, the movies you remember. You think it was all better. The sports, that's a big one. I love sports, and I'm so much. Oh man, in the '80s, it was better in the '80s and '90s. It was better in the '80s and '90s. If you just watch, no, it wasn't. Like no, the objectively, I'm talking about if you take someone who's never somehow never know about the game of basketball, and they just learn everything about the game of basketball, and then what makes a good basketball player and what doesn't, and you take clips of an average game in the '90s and the '80s, and the average game now, objectively, there's the players now are just more skilled, more athletic, just better, and But you hear, oh, because back in the day, you could have slugged and you could slug somebody and they wouldn't, you would just get attacked and you wouldn't get thrown out the game. Like, no, that's just, it's because you now you have three kids by two different women and then they're all in your ears and you can't enjoy the game. Back in the day, you could run home and just enjoy the game after you get done hooping at the park. And so then you, of course, you think those games are better than, you know, those days were better. Those era was better because your life. I'm not gonna say it was better, but it was freeing, and that's what the biggest problem is. Too many people are just whether the world is killing everybody, and so that there was a time when the weight of the world like you could avoid it. Nowadays, you really can't avoid it because of social media and the internet. And because like it's just getting out of like if society is decaying to a point you can avoid it and you shouldn't avoid it. I mean, if your society is decaying and you actively take part in a society, which everybody does by default, then you can't like why would you ignore? But that's another topic for another conversation, I guess. But yeah, I think like I said, the weight of the world, like there's so many problems, so many it's all amplified wars, pedophilia, murder, all just this evil in the world, and then it. Of course, it's good now. That it's all brought to light, but back then, it was just and politics was more like separated from the average, or it was something if you were going to get into it, it was something you had to really study or be really in tune with. Nowadays, it's just kind of everything now. I mean, how do we do it? I don't. We just have to. We have to find a way to free ourselves of the world and enjoy life like we did when we were kids. That's the key. Because the past, that was all a lie. Like when we were kids, like I said, I'm not gonna say how old I am because I feel old. But I was born 2001, and I don't feel old. But like, you gotta remember, our parents have to deal with like you know, and cause I finally remember the 2000s. I finally remember that. Like in my opinion, I know everybody says the 90s were better than the 80s. In my opinion, I think the 2000s were better because that was we got our taste of like the 80s, 90s, and the outside or whatever they call sacred. We got that, and we kind of were growing alongside the internet. So I think we had the kind of best childhood. But then you think about what our parents were dealing with: the housing crisis, the recession, uh, then they just 9/11 like 9/11 we making jokes about 9/11 and that's we're so desensitized to 9/11 but imagine being a parent like I turned 7 months to the day 7 months to the day of 9/11 and then I cannot imagine how my mother felt just watching that like having a newborn son into the world because America is supposed to be like untouchable like there hadn't been an attack like a real war or anything on American soil since 1812 so no, like probably nobody alive at that point has seen something on 9/11, and or seen like any kind of attack. Like there's terrorist attacks, but nothing like that. And just bringing a child into the world and just like, and then of course just watching the world change around the Patriot Act, this new hyper technology, it's everywhere. Like I'm sure they remember fondly on what the 90s was like growing up, and I'm sure people in the 90s with the 90s wasn't perfect. There was like the Rodney King riots. I mean, I'm not. 90s wasn't perfect. OJ got away with. There was a lot. There was a lot of racial tensions in the 90s. I'm sure people in the 90s were like, back in the 80s, it wasn't like this. In the 80s, I'm sure if the people in the 80s didn't take it for granted, then that's on them. But I'm pretty sure there were some people in the 80s. And I know I already said this, but I'm just 80s there was a legit crack and coke epidemic. People's cultures and like our culture was in communities were falling apart. Behind the scenes of all the dancing and the cool whatever we had, it was all falling apart. We were being targeted for it. I'm sure they remember. Oh, back in the 70s, blah blah blah, and then back in yeah, you can go on and find so many things wrong with nowadays and hold sacred the past, but why not like I said at the beginning, why not just strive to make the present and the future better for, our kids, our grandkids, or like that's something our generation and even millennials above ultras, that's something we need like unfortunately boomers and Generation X and this is something they kind of didn't do us any favors in the world. And that's something we all know. Like they like to hoard wealth. They think, because they had it easy, they kind of abuse the system. I'm not gonna get into that. I love boomers, but Well, you may as but like why we're in our 20s right now. Like I said, I'm in my 20s. Some of y'all are gonna be in your teens, years. Some of you are in your 30s, even your 30s or late 40s, late even 50s. Why not? You deserve a good time now. You don't deserve to look in the past all the time. And I'm everybody watching this. You deserve a good present now, and your kids deserve that. Your grandkids deserve a better past than what we had. As your adulthood deserve. Everybody's adulthood deserves to be better than their childhood and their teenage years and their and then even going on forward. Because that's how I feel. I feel like everybody's life should get better as time goes on because I mean, it's this thing called life is cruel. It's 70. Hopefully, we all live 70 or even longer. It could be cruel if, if we're always stuck in the present and misremembering the past.